Hi everyone. Happy Thursday out there. I hope you are all ready to sit and listen to all about brioche. Now, I have invited Bristol Ivy to pop on here, and she will be here before too long. But I can always introduce her before she comes in so that I don't embarrass her by saying how great she is. So Bristol Ivy is a designer. She's based in the US, and I've known her for many years. She's done a couple of designs for us for Seasons Clubs, and the most recent one she's done was in Brioche, and it was really spectacular. It was a set here. It was the Housemann Cowl and the Housemann mitts, and they're just gorgeous. I will show them to you a little bit more later on. But the first time I really came across her and started kind of looking into her work was on Craftsy, because we were both doing Craftsy at the same time, and some of her courses were on brioche, and they are in fact where I initially learned how to work brioche. So I've sent the invite on to her, so she should pop up at any point with it, kind of jumping in there. But for the moment, I'm going to open up the floor to you. Tell me where you're coming from. Have you done brioche before? Do you love it? Do you hate it? Are you kind of indifferent to it? And have you come across Bristol before? So I'm curious to hear if you've got a brioche journey or if you're just a little bit curious about it. I know for me, the first time I came across it, it was usually in things like shawls or something very complex where it looked gorgeous but quite intimidating. And I didn't get to grips with it until I started experimenting with it myself. I basically I looked at the basic stitch and I did a section of brioche in that, and then just after a while realized, okay, I know what's happening. I'm pretty comfortable with it, and moved on from there. And the two color one was experimentation, because I'm like, okay, I can see that the brioche knits are in this color, so it means the brioche pearls should be in the other, but I'm on the wrong end of the needle. So I guess I slip it back to the start. So that was actually a little bit of a learning curve, trying to figure out how you put it all together and how it works. For me, I think I like to experiment through with stuff as I go through. I'm looking down here. Karen from Tennessee, you love brioche. Oh, it's good to know. I'm glad I'm not the only one. Diane, you're addicted to brioche. Helen, brioche has been on your knitting bucket list for years. So you're up for the new autumn knit. Excellent. So yeah, the new autumn knit is behind me here. That's Maeve, and it uses brioche and contiguous shoulders. Oh, I see Bristol is here, so I'm going to add her now. Oop. Hopefully that pops in here. Oh, I see it's, yay, it worked. Technology is behaving.
That was a struggle bus. We're good.
Sorry. Well, fortunately,
No,
I can talk for a really long time all about brioche, so it's an easy. Lovely to have you here. I don't know if you heard I gave a very brief introduction talking about the brioche history, but I know that you enjoy talking about brioche as much as I do.
I do. It's one of my favorites.
Actually, one thing I've never asked you, do you remember when you learned brioche?
I do, because it was a very clear, like, oh, that makes sense moment, because I'd seen it before,
Yeah.
and I'd seen it in written instructions, and the written instructions made zero sense to me.
Yeah.
And I was working for a yarn company at the time. We had worked together at Brooklyn Tweed when I was there, and a few different patterns came through with brioche in it. And for some reason, I don't know why, it just clicked.
Yeah.
And I think like all of us have certain things that work really well with our brains.
Yeah.
And brioche is just one of mine. One of the interesting things I think is that I came at it through fisherman's rib.
Yeah.
Which is a really cool one because it's the same exact stitch structure as brioche,
just
but
done
done very differently.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah. And so, having looked at brioche instructions and said this makes no sense, to knitting fisherman's rib, to looking at those patterns, being like, oh, okay, that's what we're doing.
Yeah.
really, really helped. And I basically went from like, I think I swatched it once and then I designed a cowl in
Yeah.
it. So
That sounds about right. Yeah,
yeah, it's how we roll.
there's actually my husband's grandfather, who originally came from Odessa and moved to Amsterdam. He was somebody who he would take tennis lessons. He'd have 10 lessons under his belt and it's like, I know what I'm doing, and then begun teaching. So like I find that like you keep that philosophy. Once you're 10 lessons ahead of someone, you're good.
You're good. And there's obviously things like I go back and look at that pattern now and I was like, I maybe could have done things differently. Just in terms of, because for me, it follows a knit purl structure. So I'm just like, I don't need to use brioche abbreviations in
Yeah,
that first pattern. And I've
yeah,
since been like, oh no, I do actually.
yeah.
That
It
makes
makes
it
it
very
much
complicated.
tidier. Yeah.
Yes, it does.
Yeah, because I was actually saying that I had because when I came to brioche, it was the time where there was a lot of really complex brioche shawls and stuff out there, and I looked at it and it felt really intimidating. So I
Yes.
ended up needing to step it back to feel comfortable with it. I'm like, okay, I'm just going to do one color brioche, so I figure out what is this stitch? Why are people making such a big deal of it? And I'm
Yeah.
like, oh yeah, that's fine. I can do that.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
but I have to almost make things up myself, because with two color that was it. I'm like, I can see what's supposed to happen, and I knit one and I know the other ones are meant to be purl, but I'm on the wrong end. Oh, so I must slide it back. So
Yeah.
it was one I basically reinvented for myself so that I could understand the structure, and then I was
Yeah.
happy to go through and follow patterns, but I actually had to internalize how it worked, and then I could go, oh yeah, this is fine, this makes sense now.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Make a
um,
lot of mistakes and figure it out that way.
Yeah, yeah. And I bought the Nancy Merchant book, which is great, but she does a lot of things quite differently. So it was like I learned all that set of language, and then how patterns tend to be written in brioche now currently, which is a little
Yes.
different. So I've ended up with the mashup between the two of them somehow.
Well, I mean, that's one both amazing and somewhat frustrating thing about knitting is that we don't have a standard
Nope.
vocabulary. And especially with brioche, like it is, I mean, all knitting is invented, nothing is standardized. And so literally we just make it up as we go along.
I know.
Sometimes like I'm pretty sure someone else has used a different term for this.
Yeah.
But we're gonna go this direction because that's
This
what
will
makes
make
sense
sense to
for
me.
me.
Which
Yeah.
is fine until people start like naming things after themselves, and then you're so well. I mean, the funny one is things like a sewn bind off, tubular bind off, Italian bind off, and at some point I'm like, wait a second, they're all the same thing,
They
which
are.
does make things very confusing, because you're looking, it's like, oh, I don't know that bind off, and then you look at the directions or you watch a video and you're like, I've totally done that before.
And there are patterns too that don't name them. And so you look at them, you're like, oh, I have done short rows. They just didn't call it
Yeah,
short rows,
yeah.
stuff like that. So yeah, it's wild.
Yeah, I'm seeing a bunch of notes of messages coming in here, so I'm just going to quickly flick through
Yeah.
here. Karen was saying she's done some brioche in several of your patterns, and a couple from Lauren Elkins. And like Diane, she's addicted to it. Yes, it is
It
addictive.
it
Uh,
is.
Carol from Virginia learned brioche from Stephen West, likes it, but it's been a while. She's doing it, and she's doing the Maeve knit along. Yeah, the Maeve behind here is a brioche sweater I've got for the autumn.
Yes.
Monica, she's tried brioche, but it doesn't always come out the way she would like. She needs to analyze it a bit more. Mariette from Estonia, some smaller projects, but not a sweater. Kathy has done basic brioche, but hasn't got the hang of anything except the basic stitches, and it's on her to-do list. Kimberly has struggled for years to do brioche, but is determined to figure it out.
Got
This
this,
is the
Kimberly.
year, Kimberly.
It is.
And Lorraine has a love-hate relationship, and it involves lots of unknotting.
Yeah.
Um, Margie has the craftsy class from both of us, and she's finished the tea leaves cardigan from
Yay,
you.
thank you.
And where are we? Knitting grandma. Oh, hang on, I've jumped forward here. You've seen the amazing Bristol in Bangor, and have met me in my shop in Ireland. Oh, that's really cool that
I
you've met
love
both of us.
that.
And she's knitted one color brioche and wants to learn more. Cecilia has never knit brioche. Melvia has a love-hate relationship. loves it now and does less fixing mistakes. That's always a bonus. Anne has done one of my patterns, and the video workshops have helped. Good. And Margie as loves it, except when she makes mistakes. I can feel you. I'm looking down here. Is there any questions popping in? I think it's mainly just people saying they're addicted to brioche or they don't like fixing mistakes. Elaine, you has learned a lot from you in your color work yoke sweater. Camilla loves brioche. Taking out brioche is something that scares her to death and feels so good when you fix it. I know that
so
feeling.
good.
Ruth was saying she came to brioche from knit one below and fisherman's rib, and she finds it interesting in both 1 and 2 color, and is designed a cap to teach others. And
Very cool.
Elaine has completed one of my brioche sweaters. Excellent. Onel loves the look of brioche, is only familiar with the basic, and Mary has tried it a couple of times. Liz, it took you a while to make sure you did one project every few months to keep up a lack of consistent standards in naming. Yes.
Yeah.
I think I've gone through, I apologies if I've missed something. I think I've gone through most of them now at this stage. I was looking at, somebody was doing both brioche, and I've got like a bunch of brioche swatches here, but someone working here was just doing brioche and fisherman's rib. In her head, they were interchangeable. But the brioche looked much tidier and plusher than the fisherman's rib, which was really interesting.
Can I tell you
Because I would have thought they'd
why?
look identical.
They do, but there is one significant difference. Well, kind of two significant differences, because when I'm teaching brioche in person, I almost always go from 1 by 1 rib into fisherman's rib into brioche. And there's typically a marked difference between the fisherman's rib and brioche.
Mm-hmm.
And I used to always think that, fisherman's rib was always going to be looser than brioche. Partly because when you drop a stitch, which is basically
There's
what you're
more
doing in
yarn.
fisherman's rib, it's more yarn, right? The yarn it takes to create a knit stitch is 3 times as wide as the stitch itself.
Yeah.
When you're doing a yarn over, that's less distance. It's like 2 times as much.
Mm-hmm.
But the other factor that comes into play when you're working brioche, specifically in one color, is that you never purl in brioche with one color.
Yeah.
In fisherman's rib, you are purling every other stitch.
Yeah.
And so your purl tension and how your purl tension versus your knit tension comes into play is a major factor in the difference in gauge between your brioche and your fisherman's rib, which is fascinating because it's an absolute like canary in the coal mine of, oh, there is a difference in my tension here. I tend to purl slightly looser than I knit. It doesn't really come out when I'm doing stockinette, but I can definitely see it in the difference between my fisherman's and my brioche.
I had a class a couple of months ago, and we were swatching, and we were starting first of all back and forth swatching, and the pattern was in the round, and I was just showing them, the cheat where you can do it in the round and just pull yarn across the back. It was I have never ever seen such a dramatic difference in gauge. It just blew her away. Like it was like there was no comparison in the fabrics.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, I think we can safely say you have a loose purl stitch.
Yes.
Just incredible. Yeah.
Yeah.
It is, but I think that the yarn over versus the drop down still has a bit of an impact.
It absolutely does. Yeah.
Yeah. Because it's have you done? I haven't really worked, like I did fisherman's rib just for the cowl of a sweater years ago, but I've never done it for a large scale project. Can you do 2 colors in fisherman's rib, or
you
the same way?
can. Yeah. So if you're working it has also been a long time since I've done 2 colors, so I'm working this through in my head. You would do in the round, you'd work 1 round with 1 color where you knit 1 below, purl 1, and then on the next round you'd purl 1 below, knit 1, and then whatever color you knit with gets dropped on the next row and therefore becomes the shawl over the top.
Yeah.
So it is the same situation. Like you have 1 color on one side and 1 color on the other side.
Yeah. As I suspect that if you're using 2 colors, that brioche probably is a little bit more straightforward.
I think so.
Yeah.
I feel really bad. I still do fisherman's rib every once in a while.
Yeah.
But basically, as soon as I learned brioche, I was like, I'm abandoning you forever. 'Cause
Yeah, this
brioche
makes
is
much
just,
more
yeah,
sense. I've got like, you're putting
yeah,
on on the needles what you're going to be using rather than like
right,
trying to
right.
drop down below. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And when you see the two together and which one you prefer the look of.
Yeah,
But yeah, but it's very interesting. And I wonder if one did more from the other in terms of, it's like, hang on a second, I bet this is an easier way of doing it. So
yeah.
I don't have to go and like basically drop down every second stitch.
And
Just
it's,
take the middle game man
I
out.
am curious because so Nancy Marchand said that the name brioche. Have you heard this story before? I think
No,
she
I
wrote it in Nature
haven't.
Read. The name brioche came because the stitch pattern arrived to Western countries via sailors coming from North Africa. And my cat just joined me. And the stitch pattern was on footstools that looked like loaves of brioche. Yeah.
I
That is
love
the reason
that.
why it's called that. It has nothing to do with the stitch whatsoever. It's just, I know the tail just goes through. Um, so, but what that means is that we're looking at a transition point between North Africa and England. And then fisherman's rib typically is associated with the Channel Islands, which is along that same path. So we're looking at the potential that that stitch did show up in multiple places.
Yeah,
And it's just a matter of like who deconstructed it which way.
yeah, yeah.
So yeah, it's fascinating.
It's really interesting, and I mean the idea that just there's so much knitting history that we don't know about because the same way as a lot of inventions have happened simultaneously in different spots, and then when
Yeah,
they come together,
absolutely.
it's like, oh, we do this thing that has the same end outcome, but in this different way. But like the
Right.
end result is often going to be the same when it comes out.
Yeah.
Um,
Super cool.
Yeah. And now another question for you in relation to getting back to brioche. Do you have a particular knitted item that would be your favorite thing to knit or to wear in brioche? Cowls, hats, mitts, sweaters.
Oh, that's a very, very good question. I love a brioche shawl. I love it because it feels like that's a place you can show off a little bit.
It's true. It's true.
It's also, I have to be careful about brioche because one of the really nice things about it and fisherman's rib is that it has amazing heat retaining qualities. And so I have to be extremely careful about like what fiber content and how thick of a yarn that I use. Because I have zero temperature control.
Yes, you don't want to
So
overheat. Yeah.
I tend to
Yeah.
overheat immediately. So
Yeah.
if I'm wearing a sweater in brioche that's larger than like a sport weight, I will pass out.
Yeah.
So I tend to, if I'm going to play with it in accessories and something that I
Mhm.
can take off quickly, which is really sad.
That makes sense. Yeah.
But that's kind of where my body's at. Um, so I really like playing that way with kind of larger flat plane structures. I do love a good brioche cowl though. I'm
Yeah.
doing a long weekend class in Port Townsend, Washington, in about a month, where we're going to be doing brioche from soup to nuts on a cowl base. So it's really fun to use that as like, okay, we're learning in the round, but it is a small circumference,
Yeah.
and it's a really good palette for playing.
And get lots of practice in a small
Yeah,
piece. There's a
yeah.
few questions have popped up here. Melvia was asking, how would you fix an elongated purl in fisherman's rib?
Ooh.
I mean, I assume you'd be doing the same way as with the standard purl, where you might try combination purl or Eastern purl, where you wrap the other way might help, so that it's going to be a smaller stitch. Is probably be where I would start with that.
Yeah, that's a very good question. And I think it's totally tangential, but if you do a combination pearl or Eastern pearl, um, fisherman's rib might be a better fit for you than brioche because with standard brioche, you have to flip the direction of the yarn over if your pearl is mounted differently.
Hmm.
If your stitch is mounted differently. Found that out the hard way in a
Yeah, but
couple
with this,
classes.
if you're dropping things down, it won't. Yeah, yeah, it won't have
Right,
as much of
right.
an impact. Yeah,
Um, or just a smaller needle size,
yeah.
especially if you're working back and forth. I will have, if I've got a interchangeable needle, I'll have my knit size on one end and I'll have my purl size on the other end, and I'll have
Yeah.
that purl size be smaller to compensate. So,
Hmm.
or if you don't have that, like use two different needles.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, I've talked
Uh,
about this in one of my class in all my classes, but I
mhm.
firmly believe all knitters exist on a scatter plot of like, this is beautiful and I have stopped caring. And so like we all get to pick where we land on that. So
Yeah.
there's certain things like, I'm good. I'm not going to do the two needle thing.
Well,
But
for me, it's also that like what is comfortable and pleasant experience for you as well.
yes.
Like, so it's like it's that intersection of yes, you want what you come out of it to resemble, and you know, and size wise and stitch
Yeah.
definition
Yeah.
wise, so that you're happy with it. But it has to be comfortable. So, like,
Yeah.
if you
100%.
naturally knit very tightly and it's not uncomfortable for you, then go up a needle size. You'll be fine, you know. But if
Absolutely.
it's hurting you and your fingers are hurting, then you need to figure out how to change it. So it's I think it's also how
Yeah.
comfortable it is from your knitting style. There was
Absolutely. Because
Lorraine was
it
asking
should
what
still
is
be
fish.
fun.
I'm talking over you. Sorry.
No, no, you're fine. I was just saying
uh,
knitting should still be fun.
exactly. And if you forget that, and if it becomes stressful, then you know, then you need to reevaluate how you're knitting and take it back a step, and you know,
Yeah.
bring the fun back.
Yeah.
So Lorraine was asking, what is a fisherman's rib? So I will, if you want to, if you want to answer that, go for it.
Well, and I think Peggy just put a really good note in there that tucks it together. I wondered if there's a difference between brioche and brioche tuck. So a tuck stitch is the kind of overall umbrella term for all of these things that we're talking about. So fisherman's rib, brioche. What it is when you work two rows together vertically, like a vertical knit two together. And that creates a compression in your fabric. And with brioche, it's just a two row compression, one row and the row above it. Same with fisherman's rib, one row and the row above it. Tuck stitches you can do over multiple rows. So there are some patterns where you'll do like a brioche yarn over the same stitch on multiple rows and bring, three or four rows together in the
And it's
compression.
going to look gathered then at that
It
point where
is.
it is. Yeah.
Yeah. So it can be, they all live under the umbrella of tuck stitch, where you really is the gist of the whole thing is that vertical knit two together.
Yeah, and with fisherman's rib, what you're doing is every second stitch, you're knitting into the stitch below, so it unwraps that stitch. So it's like a deconstructed ribbing, so, which is effectively what brioche is, because with brioche, you're putting the yarn over on the needle so that you're doing it at the same time. With fisherman's rib, it looks like it's working normally, but then you're knitting into the one below, so you're just unwrapping it and after the fact creating the yarn over really is
Yeah.
probably a
And
way of
that's another reason that I like brioche more, is that brioche wants to help you. Like the yarn overs are sitting on the stitches that you need to work.
yeah.
With fisherman's rib, it looks like normal knitting. So you look at it and you're like, I'm not actually sure what I left off
Mhm,
on.
mhm.
Things look weird. But with brioche, it's like a very clear flag of like, okay,
Yeah.
you're supposed to work this next, or you have been working this.
Absolutely. I was actually say to people that I think that the hardest brioche is two color flat back and forth because there's the most to think about.
Yeah.
Whereas after one, like one color flat's fine because it's the front and the back are the same, so it's pretty
Yeah.
straightforward. But after that, I often suggest jumping to two color in the round because it's color coded. Your
Yes.
knits are in one color, and your brioche knits and your brioche pearls are in another. So it's much easier to keep track of what's going on as you're learning it, I think.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I usually start with one color flat, then one color and two color in the round, and then
Yeah.
four color or four
Yeah.
color? No, two color flat, not four color, because it does go. It all builds in progression. Row
I think so.
one is the same in everything,
Yeah.
and you just continue adding to it.
Yeah.
So
So you're learning
one
a new
row
stitch
pattern.
with flat, you're learning brioche knit. In the round with two color, you're learning brioche pearl, and then two color flat, you're just through it's you put it all together.
Yes. And it almost feels like brioche two color flat feels like a logic puzzle. You're just like, if
Yeah.
this, then this.
Yeah.
And it's just a lot of like figuring out what your fabric is telling you.
Which is why I had to invent it when I did it because I was looking
Yeah.
at it and I'm like, okay, I'm just going to figure this out. I know there's two colors and I know one column is each, and I actually I had to just do a swatch where I was
Yeah.
trying to figure out what's happening. It was the only way my brain would process it because reading it, it just made no sense. And watching a video of somebody else doing only go so far. You have to get it on the needles.
Yeah. Well, and it's also too when you don't understand the structure of it, it's about memorizing rather
Yeah,
than about understanding. And I would so much rather start simple and understand what's going on than rely on my very unreliable memory for
yeah,
how
yeah.
to do the 4 steps over and over again.
I'm just looking down here to make sure. And Elaine said you've done brioche scarves from Nancy Merchant's book. You love her
Yeah.
patterns. Knitting flat is a bit crazy.
Yeah. Yeah.
uh, Peggy, you're coming. Oh, you pulled that up already. Yeah, I don't. I thought there was something new, but I think we've answered most of the ones kind of popping up there. I think my favorite thing about brioche is probably the fact that increases and decreases, even done in a tiny amount, have this really dramatic impact.
We
Like a
do.
little bit goes a long way.
Yeah, that's the big thing. It's there's so much visual bang for your buck with brioche
Yeah,
that it really you can do things that would look very simple in stockinette or even in regular rib, and they just look so amazing.
yeah,
It's very
yeah.
impressive to non-knitters
I know,
and
and
to
it's yeah, and it was, and the realization of that, that even doing a little swatch with just a few increases, a few decreases, just varying where they branch, and you suddenly have this really intricate looking structure,
yeah,
and you're like, that wasn't like it's not. Oh, once you know the basic increases and decreases, other than keeping track of where they are,
yeah,
it's not overly complicated.
it's really not.
Complicated.
I gotcha. Yeah, it's really not. It's a matter of just like watching what's happening in your fabric.
Yeah,
Very
yeah.
cool thing.
You may be curious. I'm going to tell you a small bit about the Maeve sweater because I decided to do something that may have been a little bit stupid, but I decided that I wanted to combine brioche and a contiguous sweater.
Oh, I
Um,
love that.
so
Love
there was
that.
multiple swatching and several different start and stop attempts because, of course, um, have you done contiguous sweater before?
I've not published anything
Okay,
contiguous, but I
but you've
have
knit
played with
some,
it.
yeah.
Yeah.
Because it's so reliant on the increase rate to form the shoulders. But of course,
Mhm.
brioche, all of the ratios are different. And on top of that, all of your increases are doubled. So, with the contiguous, normally you'll have an increase on each side, on the right side and the wrong side to get to
Yeah.
this width, and then you move to the sleeves. So I started off with the first one, and I'm like, okay, if I just do it on the right side with your double increase and not the wrong side, it should do the same. But it's so horizontally stretchy that you have to quite underdo the number of increases and even underdo the neck because it very quickly becomes way bigger than what you want.
Yeah. Yeah,
Um,
the road to stitch gauge is
yeah,
so not regular.
yeah, yeah. So yeah, and I ended up then playing with the different types of increases. So I just did the yarn over increases for the top because you're doing so many, but then for the neck and for the body has got a zigzag. So I've done like the Nancy Marchand right and left increases for the
Nice.
body to curve it so that it's a little more subtle. But yeah, that was definitely one of those things that halfway through the yoke, I'm like, I have no idea if this is going to work. And then when it eventually does come out, it's like, yay!
Yeah. Yeah. It's a really good feeling.
Yeah, yeah.
It is intense though.
So what's the Housemann mitts and
Yeah.
cowl that you did? Are they the last brioche designs you've done, or have you done another one since then?
I haven't done anything since then. I have been neglectful of my brioche duties.
I think it's time to get some brioche on your
I know.
needles.
So I still so the class I'm teaching in Port Townsend haven't actually knit the cowl yet. So that's the next one. But I did just get I was on a trip where we stopped in various places along the coast of Maine where I live, and there's a dyer about an hour from me who does really beautiful gradients. So I got a gradient from her and a semi-solid from her, and both in fingering weight. So I think those are going to be. I'm going to like let loose a little bit and have a relatively complicated brioche shawl.
Ooh,
So
I'm looking forward to it.
might be a minute, but it's going to happen.
Carol was asking, how do you count gauge? And will I show us in the
Ooh,
video? The gauge is interesting because it actually, what you see is just one row for every two. So the actual counting is the same. It's just that how you put it together with the gauge and the pattern is going to look a little different. I've oscillated back and forth, Bristol, with this because on the original patterns I did, I actually wrote the row gauge for what you could see,
Okay.
rather than
Yep.
what you knit. But on this one, I actually just went ahead and did a standard row gauge, even though it's not what you count. But it is kind of tricky. Have you? I know when you did the pattern with this, you did what you're actually working as opposed to what you're
Yes.
counting. Would you always
Yeah.
do it that way, or have you ever done it the other way?
I always do it that way, but I don't think it's necessarily, I don't think there is a standard. I
Yeah.
think it comes down to reading the notes on the pattern.
Yes.
Um, and because I have seen patterns where people count like what you see,
Yeah.
which is entirely fair because it's hard to remember to do that every time, to double it every time. But
Exactly. Yeah.
yeah, it is, for every 2 rows worked, you get 1 row of
Yeah.
fabric. And as such, the row gauge, if you count every row, is like a 1 to 4 ratio, stitch to row. And if you count just what you see, it's like a 1 to 2 ratio. So that's also my key when I look at patterns. I'm like, what am I seeing in terms of ratio?
Yeah. It,
Um, and that helps me figure it out. But yeah, it is a tricky one because it's like
it
it's
is.
an existential question.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
what is a row in brioche? Does a slip stitch count as an action and therefore count as upward movement in the
Yeah,
pattern?
and I think you're right. There's no perfect way of doing it. That like the writing out every row would be more standard, but the other one is probably easier for the knitter because once you've got the
Yeah,
note in there, it's like what you see on your brioche is what is what is
yeah.
counted in the thing. So but it could throw people because they're like, but I've knit this many rows if you've calculated. I have the same thing with garter stitch because I've had a few people who thought they were way off in their garter stitch row gauge and they were just counting the garter bumps and not realizing that the
Ooh,
dips in between was also a row.
yeah.
That because it wasn't immediately visible, that it was a row that it's counted a little differently. And like when I'm counting garter stitch, I count every second one and double it as well. So similar to
Mhm.
brioche, because you can't really easily see the middle one. It's like,
Right.
okay, two,
Same
four.
with same with like slip stitch patterns or mosaic patterns where you just have to kind of, this
Yeah,
pattern repeat was 8 rows worked. It may not look like it, but it
yeah.
is. Yeah. It's
We
tricky stuff.
have,
I have seen some designers write it so that it's like row 1A, row 1B. So those both count as row 1,
yeah,
and therefore they count them together as 1 row in the
yeah,
fabric. Like
yeah,
I could go with that.
yeah. And the whole thing, and then that kind of fits together quite logically with the gauge. And I have done
Yeah.
that before in previous ones. For this one, because a lot of it's in the round and all the rest, I actually just went with kind of what you had done with the Houseman. So
Yeah.
I've jumped ships onto another gauge ship here, just going to confuse everyone.
I know.
um, uh, Cecilia, you were asking what clubs were these in? So the Houseman Knits and Houseman Cowl were both in the spring seasons 24, so the most recent one. So that's still the digital version of that is still up there. If you want to go try your hand at this, it's 2 color brioche and the mitts are great. I love the mitts. They're the I'm going to stick it on my finger so I can actually show you. Um, it is just a small amount of increases, but as we were saying, a small amount with brioche goes a long way. You've got a big double increase here, and then if I remember correctly, this one was big, and then decreases here, and then some of the other ones they completely balance out, and some of them
Yeah.
they're increased, but it creates a really lovely pattern across the front here.
Yeah.
And then this top part is what broke people
I
actually doing the
know.
knitted on cuff edge.
I know. I know.
But I mean, I think the reality is that like if somebody wanted a very straightforward mid pattern, just even
Absolutely.
doing up here and doing a bind off on the top, I think would actually work really well also for a really beautiful but simplified brioche knit design, or as
I
you
just
you were
can't leave.
talking about. Hmm?
Yeah, I just can't leave well enough alone. So
Well, I challenged you to to do something to teach. It was a teaching exercise, so it's trying to figure out, yeah. And I suppose actually with things like this, it's kind of an interesting idea of where you have like here's an exit stream here. If you're newer to brioche and this part's a challenge up to here, finish here.
Yeah.
If you want to really max it out, go to the end.
Yeah. Absolutely.
But yeah, because there's always ways of of modifying things so that you get the essence and the really interesting part of something, and
Yeah.
then if the rest is just it kind of loops back to what we were talking about at the start, is that you should be enjoying your knitting, and if something is becoming more difficult than you actually want to deal with, then modify, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And
Yeah,
also, knitting is really soft, so when you throw it across the room, it doesn't break. So that's
yeah,
always good. You
yeah,
can have a little bit of a tantrum with it if you need to.
yeah. So it sounds like you're doing a lot of teaching at the moment. You've
I
got this
am.
coming up. Is it, that's next month, is it?
That's next month. I'll be in Port Townsend, Washington. I just came off of 3 weeks of teaching here in Maine, which is amazing. I got to spend last week on a windjammer doing a knitting cruise off the coast of Maine, like you do, which was one of the coolest things I've done. But yeah, I've got that brioche coming up. I'm teaching a couple of classes in Salem, Massachusetts in September. I'm going to be at Rhinebeck. Am I going to see you at Rhinebeck?
I won't be at Rhinebeck this year. No, I'm afraid.
Womp womp.
I'll just
Okay.
wave virtually.
Yes. Yes. Oh, I guess I did do a brioche variant pattern. So going back to the tuck stitch, one of my Rhinebeck projects is a vest in something called rose stitch. It's called Nouvelle Vague and the pattern, and it is brioche,
Mhm.
but you do 2 rows in your main color, and then you do a third row in a contrast color, and then 2 rows in your main color and a third row in a contrast color. So it kind of switches a little bit what you're playing with. And I don't actually know if I have it. Oh, I do have it.
Oh, cool.
I have to hide it because one of my cats is obsessed with woolly wools, and this one is a big target.
Oh,
So
pretty. Oh, that's really pretty, Stitch.
yeah,
Nice.
and it's once you get the hang of it, it's super super fun.
Yeah, that's
Um,
gorgeous. It's like a two-color honeycomb for, like, from where I'm
yes,
seeing. Yeah,
yeah,
really nice.
and the inside is also
Ooh,
really
very
pretty.
pretty. Have you come across half brioche stitch?
I have. I love half brioche stitch.
Because I
Yes,
can't decide. I don't. I prefer the wrong side of half brioche.
I do too. I always do. Yeah.
Yeah, because I've just been experimenting, and I'm like the front part looks a little uneven because you do, again, my pearl is also a little looser, whereas the other side, it actually, you don't have that there, so it actually looks nicer from my knitting. The
Oh,
wrong
oh,
side
I
looks
think we're
better.
talking about different sides then, because I like the one that looks like 1 rose looser, 1 rose tighter, 1 rose looser, 1 rose tighter. Do you like the side that looks like brioche?
And yeah, I'm trying to remember because I haven't done it a lot, but I swatched it, and I just remember the one that they referred to as the wrong side I liked. I could
Okay.
be wrong though on which is which because I've only done it the one time, so I don't have a good memory of it. Just
It
remember that I'm like, I prefer this
yeah.
side.
It also depends on who's writing the pattern as to
Yeah,
what's right side or
yeah,
wrong
it's
side.
true. It's true.
Yeah. And then you
It
can
was,
also do half fisherman's rib, and
yeah,
that also switches right side and wrong side. So it's yeah.
confusing. Yeah. Yeah. Because originally, when I was experimenting with this, I was like, I was thinking about doing half brioche rather than full brioche. And I'm like, no, I'm just going to go full brioche.
Yeah.
So this is a kind of a heavy DK, but I've kind of done a fairly gent, like it's a 4 millimeter needle. So it's a
Mhm.
little smaller, but not crazy. But because it's a woolly yarn, it blooms and it's not too heavy, So
Yeah.
I think it works. Although it's really hot here right now for Ireland, and I'm upstairs, and I had to turn the fan off so that you didn't hear it in the background. And I'm pretty sticky.
I know. There's a fan pointed directly at me right now where I am.
We've had a very warm summer.
Yes.
It's been like the high 70s, low 80s here, which, as there's no air conditioning and our houses are not built for it, we're
Yeah.
definitely feeling it. I mean, it's nothing like mainland Europe, but it's pretty warm. So just
Yes.
looking,
No,
Camilla
it's
said she's made
same here.
2 Housemann cowls. It was so much
Woohoo!
fun. And Melvia said the Housemann cowl is is one of her favorite brioche patterns, and she'll do
Yay!
another one. Helen, oh, the Wi-Fi dropped. Have we spoken about the possibilities of you using lifelines and brioche to help fix mistakes? We have not,
But it
but
is possible.
yes,
It is
yes,
absolutely possible.
Yeah, yeah, because I've got like definitely if particularly if it's a more complex pattern and you finished a full repeat and you want to go, okay, I know I can come back to that one, then it's definitely reassuring. You
Yeah.
do have to be careful though, I find that particularly if it's a fine yarn that you're using, that the brioche stitches kind of dip down and up. So you have it takes a little bit to maneuver them back up on the stitches in my experience.
Yeah. Yeah. That's one of those places. I think I've seen someone use barber cord, the kind of plastic cord,
Yeah,
as
yeah.
their lifeline in those situations. So it is a little bit thicker to
Yeah,
hold on
that
to.
would be quite tricky to get
I
the
know.
working needle because I was thinking that like it would have the advantage that it's going to be very secure, but it seems like it would be quite difficult to get in because you have to put it onto the same needle. Like I'm sure there's a way of doing it that I just am not seeing to get it on easily.
Yeah. I don't use lifelines very often. I just rip back and hope for the best.
I'm kind
So
of the
I would,
same because it's there's so much
yeah,
ripping with designing.
I'm just used to it at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is are do like me where over here I've got the first version of that and I'm like, okay, I'm just going to use it to sit there and then I'm going to restart so that and I actually am really glad I did that because it meant that I can okay, this is what happened here, make sure it was much easier. It was
Yes.
like seeing different iterations and I didn't have shortage of yarn so there was no reason to rip back after reuse the yarn. So that was I
Yeah.
found that really helpful.
I think I did that with the first Housemann mitts. I had another version that I was like not
Yeah.
100% on, and that just went to the side because there was
Yeah.
enough yardage with that to
Yeah.
do it again and also learn from what I had previously
Yeah.
done,
Yeah.
which is always good because, yeah,
And because oddly, I'm better at restarting than I am at ripping out. I don't know what that says, but like I'll do
I'm a ripper. I
yeah,
just, I will pull it back.
I'll do a
Or,
little bit, but I
yeah,
usually have to wait a little while. And sometimes I'll just restart and then I'll rip after I've started the other one because I'm like, well, you know what? Maybe I'll change my mind and realize this first one was right. So let me just start this and then
that's a very good point that I do tend to rip first and reconsider later and realize that perhaps I was correct the first time.
I've had that. If I decide
Oh,
I'm wrong at 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock at night, there's a 50-50 chance that I miscounted. All right.
my husband
No
has
big
a
decisions
really,
late at night. That's the
yeah, my
rule.
husband has a really good rule of like, um, don't believe the things you think about yourself after 10 p.m. and also don't make big knitting decisions after 10 p.m.
Yeah. Yeah.
because that's not a good time for making serious decisions or serious judgment calls about yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm totally with you.
Yeah.
Does I'm kind of looking back here. Melvia, you want to Melvia said, I want to try that. Is the vest pattern available? I'm not sure which vest pattern. I think it was a cowl.
The vest pattern that I did for Rhinebeck, and I think Hannah
Oh,
put it.
sorry, I missed. I thought that was a cat for whatever reason. I saw the stitch pattern. I thought it was a cowl, and yes, and Hannah has linked it down there, so the link is down
Yes.
there for anyone who's looking for it.
I was
How did I
lucky
think it
enough.
was a cowl? Oh, I think I was just because the stitch pattern was up close.
I know. And I will be doing more with this stitch pattern because I'm absolutely obsessed with it. But
Yeah,
yeah, I did a collection with a couple other people of Rhinebeck vests because we were like, it's been hot the last few years. We're going to
the
give
vests are
ourselves a
better.
little bit of time here.
Good idea.
Yeah.
The first year I went to Rhinebeck, it was so cold on the Sunday. Even though I had a coat and I had gloves, we actually left early because I couldn't feel my feet.
Yeah. There was one year that it started snowing, and I was like, I'm not emotionally prepared for this. And then another year that I was in a tank top. So,
Yeah, you have to brill a foot. It's fine if you're going, but if you were going far in advance, you kind of have to pack a full,
yeah.
4 season wardrobe
Oh
to
my
figure
gosh.
it out.
Every time.
And
Every
Melvie is like,
time.
no fixing mistakes at 1:30 a.m. I am sound
Absolutely
asleep at
not.
1:30 a.m. And Becky, you start most of your projects after 10 on a Friday and Saturday night. You more power to you is
I
all
know
I
you
can
are a
say.
bold woman.
Lorraine, you're glad to hear you're better at restarting as well. Well, I'm glad I'm not the only one. And Ruth was saying she just finished a sweater that she frogged all the way back to the setup after pieces and reknit. Oh,
It feels awful, but you also know it's the right thing to
Yeah,
do,
yeah.
which again, knitting is really soft. So when you throw it, it doesn't hurt anything
Mhm.
and you get to get a little bit of that anger
Yeah.
out.
I have, and it wound up an entire sweater that I had done up to the hood. It was bottom up and realized that the stitch pattern was off. And I'm like, all right, there's no choice. There was no choice.
I have
Gone.
done some Hail Mary passes on stuff like that. Like
Yeah,
I have cut and unraveled and reknit and
yeah.
grafted to avoid that.
Way faster next time round when you go up.
So much faster. So much faster.
Oh, I think we
Oh
probably need
man.
to wind it up. Thank you so much, Bristol. It's always fun to talk with you.
You too. Thank you for letting me nerd out about one of my favorite things.
You are very welcome. And if anyone is in her vicinity and you want an in-person class, go to her. If you wanted a sweater with me in the near future, come join the Maeve Knit Along. But thank you all so much. It was
Thank
wonderful.
you. Lovely to see you all. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye.